Begin the current Daf Masech Shabbos Daf Kuf Mem Zayin. Begin on the bottom line, last three words on Daf Kuf Mem Vav, Kuf Mem Vav Mem Vez. But we continue the discussion with the previous Daf relating to a halacha of going in water on Shabbos and about the appearance of malabin, of like as if you would launder the clothing. She's co-sponsored because of Cheskel Torah Anytime Daf Chaim. Appreciate everyone who's joining us today. Some ideas we're going to be discussing in today's Daf are several halachas relating to cleaning and wearing clothing on Shabbos. Which types of wearing are considered to be carrying, that you're not really considered wearing, it's like you'll be carrying on Shabbos in the street. Whether one may carry a wet towel on Shabbos, or we're concerned that if you carry a wet towel, you might come to actually squeeze it out. The halacha of rubbing oil on your skin, massaging the body, scraping the skin, and bathing in a therapeutic river. So begin the current Daf. Amar Rav Huna. Continue the top of Koman Zayin Midal. Rav Huna says, Hamenar Talisa. So Rashi says, Menar Talisa, if someone shakes off his jacket, his clothes from dust, Shabbos on Shabbos, he's Chai B'chatis. Rashi says, because that's libuna, that's considered whitening the garment, that's what malabin is, that's what laundering is, that would be a problem by dusting off. Tyson brings from, whether it be Rabbeinu Chanan or Rabbeinu Tam, he says that's from dew, it's from tal, which that's literally laundering because that's water, and if you squeeze that out, that's part of malabin, which is michai v'chatas. And he says it sounds like that from the story we're going to bring in the Gemara with come to the Rabbi Yosef. It sounds like it's tomadu, but actually he says that if you dust off from dust, that actually doesn't appear to be libun. But that's a machlekes Rashi and Tyson. But be that as it may, if you're shaking off your garment from something, so then you michai v'chatas malabin. Now, but the Gemara says we didn't say this only if there's the following three characteristics. Ela b'chadat, it has to be by new clothing. About tiki, but old clothing, less lamba, the way Rashi will go with Rashi that says it's dusting off. Old clothing, it doesn't make a difference to us. And also, we didn't say this as a problem, ela b'uchmi, only if it's black clothing, where the dust ruins the appearance of it, and therefore you're particular about it. But if it's white or red, less lamba, so then we're not bothered about that, and therefore it's not going to be considered malabin, because malabin is when it's cleaning it for you. Like we always say, derech lichluch. It's not considered malabin. Here also, it's not going to bother us. But who would the cover lie? And the third thing is that also you're particular about it to wear it only after you dust it off. But if you would wear your hat, let's say, with the dust, and then it doesn't make a difference to you, then it wouldn't be a problem about malabin. As the Gemara brings stories to illustrate this. Or if someone does, that's a shaila regarding that. But we're actually going to see that in the Gemara. It depends, who's doing it for who's makbid about what. In other words, if he's doing it for someone that's makbid, but he's not makbid. So the Gemara says, Ula ikla pumbedisa. Ula went to pumbedisa. Chazra abandoned the komanaftik limai. He saw people that were shaking off their garments. He says, the rabbis are desecrating the Shabbos because they were dark clothing, they were black, which we said that's one of the three criterion. And he says, to be machal Shabbos. So Rabbi Huda said to them, let's shake off our clothing in his face. And not like Kaptin Media, it doesn't bother us if there's dust on it or not. Therefore, for us, it's not malabin, because the third criteria malabin was that it bothers you. You wouldn't wear it without that. I would wear it. So therefore, taking it off is not considered as malabin.
So why aren't they menarim?
In the Chanami, it's just because. But the point is, even if they're doing it to, let's say, that it shouldn't be there, but you would wear it without it, then you're not kapyalai. So the Gemara says similarly, Abaya b'koi kamed Rav Yosef. Abaya was standing in front of Rav Yosef. Amalei said to him, Havli kumsei. He says, give me my hat. So this is like what someone just pointed out when someone doing for someone else. Chazah the ikar talala. Abaya saw that there was some dew on his hat. The dew is that like water that comes from Shemayim, whatever, from the earth. So Abu Kamachasim, like the terminology of Leisachsim. So he was hesitating, to give it to Rabbi Yosef because he had to shake off the dew from it. So Amalei said to him, Nafid Shad, he says, shake it off. Alam like Abdina Midi, we don't care about these things at all. It doesn't bother us. So since we would wear it even if it had it, so then you could shake it off because it's not considered as malabin. Now, why the next halacha is being brought? So Taisa says, since we were talking about from the halacha of the Mishnah previous Daf, from the clothing that got soaked when you're traveling, so then it's normal to since you don't want to wear these dripping clothing, to fold it up. So therefore, we talk about halacha regarding wearing folded clothing as you're walking in the street. That's what Taisa explains. Says if someone goes out into the street with a folded jacket, folded meaning instead of wearing it regularly, he folds it menachas la'kasefai that's just laying there on his shoulders. Meaning after he put on his head, he lifted up the bottom and he has it like as you see on this picture over here, that it's folded on his shoulders. So if he does the b'Shabbos, chai v'chatas, because it's not the way of wearing something and you're carrying, it's a masik. Says the Gemara Tanakh is similar in the Brayso. Those who sell jackets, garments, they go out with folded garments, and it's on their shoulders on Shabbos. So that's the liability of that's considered carrying. Now, it says the Brayso, we didn't say this only by the ones who sell the garments, rather it would be a problem with any person. That's the way sellers usually wear it. They don't wear the whole thing, they just want people to see what they have, and their wares, and therefore then we pick them, but everyone would be liable. Similarly, regarding a storekeeper that goes out with money that's wrapped up in his clothing, for carrying it. Now, we didn't say there's only a problem by a storekeeper, it's everybody. A storekeeper, you generally have that bundle tied onto his garment, it's everyone, it's just we're picking him because for him it's normal. Now, however, Vaharatanim, which Rashi says is just the name of their place, they actually could go out with the kerchief on their shoulders, and we didn't say this only for the Ratanim. It means every person. In that place, that's already go out. But again, that kerchief is normal for them. So that's the normal way of wearing it, and that would be permitted to be done. Now, the Gemara actually brings a story related to this. Allah, Rabbi Yehudi says, "Ma'isa b'hurkenes." The story of Hurkenes. B'nai Rabbi Elazar ben Hurkenes, the son of Rabbi Elazar ben Hurkenes. Sheyatza b'sudah shal kasef b'Shabbos. He went out with this kerchief on his shoulders on Shabbos. He wrapped a thread around his finger that it shouldn't fall off from his shoulder. When this story came in front of the sages, they said, no, even if it's not tied onto your finger, it's not considered a problem about carrying or that it would fall off. It's normal for them to wear like that, and you don't have to even tie it onto your finger as a precautionary measure. The Gemara says, halacha is even though there's no thread wrapped around your finger, we don't have to be concerned that that's going to be as if like now it's connected to you, because or else you'd be considered as carrying or that it might fall off. No, that's the normal way of wearing it. It's not like a jacket that you're folding up and putting on your shoulder. That's not the normal way of wearing it. It's normal to wear the kerchief like that, and if it's permitted to walk out like that. Now the Gemara says, Ula ikla be'asi barhini. Ula went to the house of Asi barhini, and boy, to the yeshiva, and they asked from him, Ma'alas is marziv. What's the halacha meaning a gutter, which we explained a different gutter on the previous daf, but what's the halacha? I think I was going to explain what he's asking to make it on B'Shabbos. Some of who he said to them, Hachem Rabbi Loi, Aslas is marziv B'Shabbos. You're not allowed to make a gutter, quote unquote, on Shabbos. So someone says, my marziv, what's this gutter that you're making? Some Rabbi Zeri says it's not literally a gutter. It means kisei bavliyasa, the Babylonian pockets. Meaning what they would do is they would lift up their garment from the ground when they were very long, and they would fold them towards upper. I think this picture illustrates it more than what it sounds like. It would sound like cuffs, but they would do it with threads, and that would be like a pocket. So that's like a gutter, which the problem of making that on Shabbos is really makabeh patish, because the clothing was too long. So now you're hemming it and you're tightening it with threads. That is something that if you make a Shabbos, that would be chayv b'chatas because of makabeh patish. But the Gemara brings a story related to this. Rabbi Yirmiyah have Yosef Kameir Bezerah. Amalei said to him, Hachimai. He says, what's the halacha like this? Which what he was doing is he was folding his garment in one way, and they asked him, what's the halacha? Amalei Asa. He says, it's forbidden what you're doing because of tikkun mana, because you're fixing the garment. And then he says, and b'hachimai, and what's like this? Again, he kept on switching how he's folding his garment and asking him, is this a gutter? Is this a problem? And Amalei Asa says, yes, all these types of ways that he was folding it and keeping it like that is going to be forbidden. As the Gemara actually qualifies, Amar Papi says, regarding this halacha that we're discussing, he says, you should take the following rule in your hand. If your intention when you're folding it upwards is that it should stay like that forever, and that's how you're hemming it, so then that's forbidden to be done on Shabbos, because that's tikkun mana, now you're fixing the garment. But kol dihilis noise. But if let's say you just want it to be nice, the way Rashi translated, just momentarily, then sure, that's going to be permitted. As the Gemara says, Kihad Rav Shisha Ber Davidi Misno Besadina Haba. During the weekday, after he would put on his clothing, so he would make sure it's like comfortable on his body, and he would straighten it out during the weekday. So in other words, we see that it's normal to do that on any given day, and it's not considered as like you're fixing the garment. So that's actually the place when you're very busy. Are you allowed to fold up your sleeves on Shabbos? Is that the same halacha that we're saying over here? When you're walking in the street, is that carrying? Or is this the his noise that the Gemara says that no, it's not being tikkun mana, I'm not folding up the garment and making it into a permanent fold. It's just the list noise and therefore that would be permitted. Not there wouldn't be as a prohibition in general of folding up. And then there's a discussion regarding carrying in Shabbos.
Carrying, but it's mechuber to the talis. How is it carrying?
We said when you fold up a talis and you put it over your shoulder, that's carrying.
Yes.
Because that's not the derech of malbush.
But you're talking about pulling up sleeves. It's part of your shirt.
And that's
So what do you carry?
no part of the shirt. So who carries part of the shirt? You could carry part of your shirt.
How can you carry the shirt?
Oh, you're saying if you're wearing part of it.
Yes, you are wearing part of it over here also.
But here you're also wearing part of it.
Yeah,
it's on your shoulder, but the breast that you're folding is the problem because that's not the way of wearing it.
No, but it's not the way of wearing it. But that's the way of wearing it. It's different.
Part of it is normal. Yeah. We'll actually see. The Gemara actually will discuss a similar case. It says the Gemara like this. Look at this case. Kiyasar Rav Dimi Amar, he says, Pamachas Yatzer Rebbe L'Sada. One time Rebbe went out to the field. Vayishnei tzidi talis, and he had the two sides of his talis, on the right and the left. Menachem al Kaseifer. They were on his shoulder, and so that was folded up. But as some Rashis are missing words over here, but they bring it here in some Gemaras but the other part that's in front and the back was on his body the normal way, going down towards the body. It's just that the other part doesn't get another picture over here, but the way he folded it up, meaning on the sides, he wasn't wearing it normal way. It was really supposed to hang down. So on the sides he folded it up on the shoulder, but in the front and the back was hanging down the normal way. So he was like chatzi wearing it. Some of them Yeshua ben Zir, so Yeshua ben Zir sat in front of him, who he was ben Cham of Rav Meir. He was the son of the father-in-law of Rav Meir, basically the brother-in-law of Rav Meir. He says, quoting his brother-in-law, he says, "Bezula chay Rav Meir chatas." You think what you're doing, Rav Meir would not hold that you chay chatas? In other words, that's not the way of wearing it. That's the way of carrying. To which Amalei Rebbe said to him, similar to what you're saying, Diktik Rav Meir ad kan. Rav Meir was so particular up until here to be chay chatas, something that's really seems to be okay because it's not all the way folded. It's the back and the front. I'm wearing the normal way. It's coming over my whole body in the front and the back. It's just the sides. I went and they folded up on my shoulders. That's how much he was particular. And even though Rebbe was wondering why that would be usher, but Shilshul Rebbe Talisi. Rebbe still undid his talis and he let it come down to the bottom because he accepted what he had said. And he says, okay, maybe that's also considered as a way of carrying. A different version, Kiyasar Rabban, when Rabban came, he says, no, Lo Yeshua ben Zirus have. It wasn't Yeshua ben Zirus, El Yeshua ben Kefusai Hayah, who he was Chaysner Rabbi Kiva, he was the son-in-law of Rabbi Kiva, and Nama he was quoting his father-in-law, Bezulai Chai Rabbi Kiva Chatas, Rabbi Kiva would not hold that Yechai Chatas, to which Amalai said, Diktik Rabbi Kiva Rabbi Kiva was so particular, meaning if I'm wearing it regularly, I fold up a little bit, it's already considered as carrying, and even so, Shilsh Rabbi Talis, Rabbi let it down because he was concerned about that opinion that might be considered as carrying. The last version, Kiyas Rabbi Shmuel Rabbi Yehuda, he says, actually no, Nishalitma. There actually was no such story like this that happened with Rebbe. Rather, they asked a shaila. They asked a question for the Rebbe. Can you go out like this? And he wanted to permit it until they told him in the name of Rav Meir that you be chayv chatas, because he held, since I'm not folding, and this is really what you're saying, like what I'm wearing the garment. He says he was wearing it. That's like what Rebbe held. He says just the sides were on the shoulder. He thought that's the way of wearing it, and they said no. Does carrying because you folded it up a little bit. That's not how you wear such a thing, and that would be considered as if you're carrying the garment and not wearing it. In the halacha, the next Mishnah, which continues on related to the theme of this parak regarding bodily needs on Shabbos, continuing on rechitza, and specifically a gzeira related to that of rechitza, of bathing on Shabbos. Says the Mishnah, harechitz b'mei ma'arav. If someone bathed himself in cave water, which is basically a mikvah that's covered, which is warm, and the heat doesn't go out. We're specifically saying the case of when it's hot, and that's why, as the Gemara will explain, we said harechitz in the b'diavad, which is because really l'ketchila it's forbidden. But if someone did bathe himself in the warm cave waters, or b'mei tveria, which are also hot waters, then the stopping, and this is the halacha really that we want to discuss. We're just saying after the fact, if you did that, and then you wipe yourself, even with 10 towels, which you wipe yourself one after the other, and that's a chiddush, because that means to say there's obviously not so much water in each one of those towels. Even so, lo yibiyim biyadai, you should not bring it with your hands back into your house, even if there's an eruv, because you might forget, you might come to squeeze it out, because it's wet. That's our concern, you might forget. Now, let's say there's 10 people, since there's a lot of people, so they'll remind each other, then then they could actually even dry themselves, even with one towel, and that's a chiddush, that even though one towel with 10 people, obviously it's going to be very wet, even so, they're allowed to bring it with their hands, and they could wipe themselves paneim, yedim, regleim, their face, their hands, their feet, which Rashi says is not specific. It's just that's normal for people to do. But it would be even if, let's say, they wipe their whole body, then they can bring it back in their hand. Even though 10 people use this one nasa towel, it doesn't make a difference because that's 10 people that remind each other. One person, even though he used 10 towels, which is barely moist, he might forget and come to squeeze it out. Oh, I mean, what if they're squeezing it out?
Yeah.
Okay, that would depend on the Tais has a shmuz about all these different sugyas. If they're chlichlich, that some might want to prove from here that would be, and some would say it depends. If it's white, then the water with white is always a problem. Squeezing out water is generally always a problem.
You don't want it.
No, but no, that's what I'm saying. He might. Here, when you're wiping your hands, that's considered not a problem about malabin when you're wiping your hands. But squeezing out, that is a problem. Squeezing out is, we don't say derech lichlich, but that squeezing out is going to be a problem. Like we said, put a rag inside a barrel because that's squeezing out. There's two parts when you have derech lichlich. There's making it wet and squeezing out from wet. Tais has all the riches on those 2 points. Making it wet is one thing. Squeezing out, that is a problem because that's going to be considered as laundering it. So now the Mishnah says another related halacha, again to physical maintenance. Sachin, a person could smear oil on Shabbos on their body. And they could go ahead and massage their body by hand for pleasure. But you can't rub vigorously on the person's body. And also, you're not allowed to scrape with a scraper a person's body because that's what's called uvdedechal. That's like a weekday type of activity. So to ein yerdin lekredima, and now I'll go down to the kredima, which is the name of a rib, and the Gemara is going to explain what's the problem going into this kredima. And ve'ein oisen aktafizin, you're also not allowed to make afiktavizin, which is the making yourself vomit and throw up. And ve'ein atzvnes hakotten, neither are you allowed to go ahead and straighten out the bones and the spine, the vertebrae of the spine of the child to the figure of the child. So what's the problem with that? And ve'ein machzirin es hashever, you're not allowed to put back a broken bone because any refu is asur because you might come to grind the herbs. And if someone had his hand or foot got dislocated, which the bone came out from its joint, so you should not massage it with cold. You could just wash in the normal way from the strap and that heals. You could do normal types of things, but you can't specifically go ahead and wash it with cold to make it go back into the joint. So the Gemara says that it makes the following dik in the Mishnah. The opening halacha was, we said that reichitz, if someone would bathe himself and he dried himself, that got us into the whole halacha. Oh, so you already got wet. What's the halacha which regarding the towels that you dried yourself? But one thing says the Gemara is Ketani, we learn what's the 2 bodies of water that it said if you bathe was the cave waters and the waters of Tveria. So says the Gemara, what's the Mishnah coming to tell us? Just like the waters of Tveria, we know that's called Chami Tveria. Those are the hot bath waters of Tveria. Af meimar chametz. So it's coming to tell us also the waters of the cave are warm, which we're saying that it was heated by the fire because, in contrast, Chami Tveria are actually permitted like a tchilas says like learned of Mem, where they left them Chami Tveria. So we're saying that this is similar to Chami Tveria, that it's warm, but it's warm. It was heated by a fire, and that's what we're coming to tell you. Haroichitz. What's the terminology haroichitz? Like we had mentioned from Rashi in the Mishnah. If someone bathed, which that's a di'evet that's an after the fact terminology, like a tchilaloi, but initially not allowed to, which as Tais explains here also, that's going on the cave border, not in Chami Tveria, because Chami Tveria said you're allowed to. We're just saying Chami Tveria to compare it to the Mei Ma'ara, to say that the Mei Ma'ara are going to be warm waters, which was heated by a fire. And that's just saying that only after the fact, but not initially. Now, Machlal, the inference is that you continue to bathe. Till ishtativ called gufa, yeah, that's regarding bathing. But let's say to pour water on your whole body, not in the normal way of bathing, that I feel like it's chila shabbatam, and then even initially you're allowed to do that, even if it was warm water. Because you tell me, but the on bathing in warm water, but let's say not bathing, just showering, that would be okay. Samani, who's the Tana of our Mishnah? Says Rib Shimon, like on the Brisa, it's a 3 Machlekes, and obviously our Mishnah is like Rib Shimon, because the Tanya, the Brisa says, a person should not shower, should not throw water over his body on Shabbos. It says, now wash yourself with hot water or cold water. Reb Shimon says it's permitted, which means not only cold water, but even warm water. So he's the time of the Mishnah. Yudam, he says, B'chaman Aser, says no, hot water it's not allowed, but saying mutter, cold water it is allowed. But one thing is, we see from these 3 different opinions that it's going like Reb Shimon. Now, the halacha then that took us into was that halacha, if someone did bathe himself, then the stopping and then he dried himself even with 10 towels, we say he's not bring with his hands because he might come to squeeze it out. So, and then the Sefer said, but if there's 10 people with one towel, that is allowed. Says Gemara, Reish Rabbi Kamashman, the Reish is teaching us a chiddush, which is regarding the individual. The Sefer Rabbi Kamashman, the Sefer is also teaching us a chiddush regarding the 10 people. Reish Rabbi Kamashman, the Reish is teaching us a chiddush. Even though this one person has 10 towels, it's obviously not so much water, but keeping the chadus, since he's one person, also there's chita, we're still good chance he's going to come to squeeze it out, and that's going to be forbidden. The Sefer was Kamashal, the Sefer is also teaching us a chiddush when it says regarding the case of Asar b'nei Adam that they could take it in their hands. That filahani, even these that the nefisha b'maya, where there's obviously a lot of water, it's one towel that 10 people use. In the mikveh, you have this one nasa, you have this one that's dripping wet because there was only one day and 10 people used it. Keeping their davening, but since there are many people together, mitkar adodi, they can remind each other, no, Shabbos. So that's why that's okay. That's the chiddush in that. Now, however, although we said this as a anonymous Mishnah, Taramon in the Bryce is actually machlokes. Mistapit adam ba'aluntis. A person dries himself in with a towel. Manicha machlon, you can put it by the window, which is near the wall of the bathhouse. But v'loyim surrender l'olarian, don't give it to the bathhouse attendants. Why? Because they suspect regarding that thing, meaning that they're going to squeeze it out. Shimon, he says, "Mistabik baluntas achas." You could wipe yourself with one towel. Umavia biyodol teipesa. He disagrees with the Tana of the Mishnah. He says you could bring it in your hands into your house. He's not geyser. Now, Amalei Baba Geyser. Baba says, "Okay, hilchas ama what's halacha?" So Amalei, he said to him, "Look, Reb Shimon, you have this of Reb Shimon, which and as the Gemara is going to explain, you have Rabbi, you have Rabbi, Shmuel, you have Shmuel, Rabbi Yechon, and Rabbi Yechon, and all of them say that it's actually going to be permitted, not like the halacha of our Mishnah." What's these for? So Reb Shimon Hadamar, Reb Shimon we just quoted here in the Bryce, that he said that you're allowed to carry in your hands. You're not concerned you're going to squeeze it out. What's this Rebbe? Because in the Bryce, Rebbe, he says, when we used to learn Torah Reb Shimon in this place called Tekaya, we used to carry oil and towels from a courtyard to a roof, or from the roof to an enclosed area, which as Rashi explains, Reb Shimon goes according to his reasoning, as we're going to explain Mitzvah Shem Mesechus Erevin, the Vayindal and Aleph, that roofs, courtyards, and enclosed areas are all one domain to be able to carry from one to another on Shabbos, even without an Erev, even if it's by many different owners, because in Halacha he considers them as one domain. So we used to carry that way until we got to the spring where we used to bathe, and as Rashi explains, we presume that they didn't leave their towel over there in a hefker place, which means that they took the towel back. And as Taisus adds on, we could presume that he was the only one going because no one's supposed to bathe with a Rebbe. Only, as the Gemara Pesachim Daf Manav says, only one student if the Rebbe needs it. We could presume Reb Shimon only needed one student when he was bathing, and therefore, when they would come back home from bathing in the spring, the student would carry it by himself, because Reb Shimon wouldn't carry it with him, and that's because he holds that an individual could bring it, and we're not concerned for schita. And he says, Hayinu, we used to. Rashi says that means each person, when it was his day to attend to the Rebbe, so you see the raya that even one person could carry the towel from this story of Rebbe. And Shmuel, what's that of Shmuel? Because I remember Yehuda or Shmuel, he says, Mistapik or the Maluntas, the person could drive himself with a towel, and maybe be able to take place, he could bring it home with his hand. So you see a third opinion. And where do you see Rabbi Yechon? That he also says permitted, and we're not concerned for schita. Rabbi Yechon, it's Allah is Mistapik or the Maluntas, the person could drive himself with a towel, and maybe be able to take place, he could bring it home with his hand to his home. So therefore you see these four opinions hold that it actually is permitted, and that disagrees with the Allah of the Mishnah. Now the last opinion that you want to ask on, the Rabbi Yechon really said that you're allowed to dry yourself with a towel and then carry it, even though you're an individual. But Rabbi Yechon just said many times in Shas, halacha is a Mishnah, halacha is like an anonymous Mishnah. Now, but now we learn in our anonymous Mishnah that it says, in this topic, and if you dry yourself, I feel a bit even with 10 towels was barely moist, you're not supposed to bring it with your hand because you might come to squeeze it out. It's Rabbi Yechon rule that it's permitted. The Gemara, that our Mishnah he taught like not as a Stam Mishnah, he attributed to a Das Yachid to a person called Ben Chachinai. So it's not a Stam Mishnah, and therefore he was able to disagree with it and say that Allah was like the other three, that it is going to be permitted to carry it even as an individual on that of Shabbos. So the Gemara continues and says that another teaching from Amr B'chi Bar Abba Amr B'Yechon says Holarian, the bathhouse attendants, Mevin Balari Nashim, they could bring the towels that were used by the women to dry themselves. They could bring it lebei bani to the bathhouse, meaning by wearing it to the bathhouse. So he could take the towel, he could take that whatever it is that he's bringing that they dry themselves with, he could wear it as long as it covers his head and the majority of his body. So to sechanisa, which Rashi translates as a large kerchief, which a person would tie between his shoulders and his head would be covered in it. You have to tie the two ends on the bottom, meaning one with the other, that it doesn't fall off of his head. Now, Tais actually explains that the Gemara in Gittin says that this achinasa is a thin garment. That's why Tais explains you have to tie the two ends on the bottom so it doesn't fly off, because it's like a very thin covering and you might come to carry it. Or Tais says because it actually looks like a load. Since it's very thin, it doesn't really look like you're wearing something. Unless you tie it, then it appears to be like a garment. So that's two interpretations of Tais why you have to tie this specifically sechanisa by the two ends of the bottom. This is lamata mikasavayim. You have to tie it beneath the shoulders, and that's where you tie it. Related, the Gemara says, when you bring the garments of the non-Jews to the soldiers that the government says you have to provide for the soldiers in your town, so don't carry on Shabbos to bring them in Rosh Hashanah. Rather, sharvivu b'hu lamata mikasavayim. Wear it and let it hang beneath your shoulders, so that the end should not be on your shoulders, rather it should be hanging down, that it should look like a garment, so that you won't be carrying on Shabbos, you'll bring it to them by wearing it. Next halacha of the Mishnah we said was sachin memashmashin. A person could anoint themselves and massage themselves with the oil and just regular massaging on Shabbos. So Torah within the Brisa, sachin memashmashin b'nei ma'ayim b'Shabbos. A person could anoint and massage his stomach on Shabbos. As long as you don't do it as it's normally done during the weekday. Can't be on Uvdin Dechayel. Says the Gemara, so how should you do it? So he says, first anoint your stomach and then massage it. Because as Rashi explains, he understood that during the weekday, they first massage and then they anoint. So don't do it the normal way, do it the other way. First anoint and then massage. Rabbi Shloimy says you don't even have to do that much. Anoint and massage at the same time. So you don't have to first do the opposite. No, you could just even do it at the same time, as long as you don't do it that the way they did it during the weekday, which is massaging and then anointing. Next halacha of the Mishnah was Abaloimis Amun. But although we said you can massage, but you can't massage intensely. You can't do a real vigorous massage. And it says, says you now stand on the ground of this river, the Yumsis, which has very salty water, for the same reason. Because it's very vigorous. It heats up the person's body. And the mud there is very salty and it's healing. Therefore, that's forbidden to be done on Shabbos. Now, Amr Yehuda Merabi says, Kol Yemeshal the Yumsis says, all the days of healing of this river, the Yumsis, are Esrim Echad Yom. It's really only for a period of 21 days that this water is very healing. And Shavuos is one of those 21 days. Now, the following question: Atzeres Lahaigisa, Shavuos is on this side, or Lahaigisa on that day, on that side? In other words, is the 21 days start by Shavuos or end by Shavuos? So the Gemara says Tashmat being right because Damash Shmuel says Kulish Shakyani, all liquids that are healing. From Pesach until Shavuos is when it's beneficial. So obviously we see that Shavuos is when it ends, not when it starts. So the Gemara is not right. Maybe Hasamu over there by those liquids that are healing. The kama the kara alma, the colder the climate is, Samali that's more beneficial, which is earlier. And therefore, their Shavuos is the end. We hear by specifically this case of the Yumtzis, Mishum Havlahu, the healing of the water is specifically because of its heat. Even the Chamal, to the contrary, the hotter the climate gets, Tfeima Ali, then it's actually going to be more beneficial. So therefore, actually, it might be that their Shavuos might be from the beginning and not from the end, because we want it to be later into the summer than earlier. Amar Abchelboy, he says a related discussion to this the Yumsis, how beneficial and how enjoyable it was, the spa of the Yumsis. He says, Chamr de Frugisa, the wine of Frugisa, which is the name of a state which had very good wine. Umay the Yumsis, and the word of the Yumsis that we're just discussing just now. It cut off the 10 tribes from the Jewish people. I heard that last year by the Kinnis, Rabbi Rosenblum was talking much about the Aseres Hashvatim, the 10 tribes, how they were totally, Oiv de Elilim, they went off. And we're having tonight, the Kinnis, that what happened to the 10 tribes, what took them away from the Jewish people. So, as Rashi explains, they were Bali Hana. They were very into physical pleasure, and they were very involved in having this good wine and having this good spa, and therefore they didn't toil and tire, and therefore they went off, and they went to bad ways. And there was this water of the Yumsis and this wine that cut off the 10 tribes which were lost from the Jewish people forever, simply because they were after this Epicurean lifestyle of just getting all that physical pleasure. Similarly, the Gemara brings a very famous story that's said in certain contexts. Rabbi Lazar ben Arach Ikla Hasan. He went over there to Fergisa, to the Yumsis, and Imshech Basrayim. He also, even though he was a great Talmid Chacham, he got dragged after the wine and the bathing and the spa, and he got into this whole thing. He's got the hookah, he's got everything going on over there, right? And what happened is, he forgot his learning. It totally forgot his big Talmid Chacham. It's gone. This guy's like, what's up, dude? Like, he just forgot it. Now, Kihada, when he came back, Asa come lemikra b'siv, he got up, he got an aliyah. He's getting an aliyah. Boy lemikra, he gets an aliyah in Sefer Shmos. He wants to say, Achaydish Ezel Lechem. This is the month for you. And Amar, what does he say? What so typifies what happens? Hacherish hayalibam. The words are very similar. Chaydish Ezel Lechem, but he's maybe glassy a little bit, and he's reading the words. And he says, Hacherish hayalibam. What does that mean? Hacherish hayalibam. How ironic is their hearts were mute. Means to say, the inspiration of the Torah, what it does with a person, it's Hashem says, L'cham alibi, Hashem speaks to you from your heart. Here he says, which is the rejuvenation of a Jew that is always on fire. And the words here, because he got dragged after the physical pleasure, was, their hearts are mute. That's how he was reading the words, which has many layers of meaning. This was because of the physical pleasure that dragged him away. And the Gemara says, the rabbis beseech mercy for him, and his learning came back. Now the Gemara says behind it, not this is what it says. The Mishnah says this others. He says, "Have a goy l'makom Torah. Exile yourself to a place of Torah." In other words, if you're a Talmid Chacham, don't stay where you are. Rather, meaning go with your chaverim that are Talmid Chacham too. Don't say that the Torah is going to come after me. The students will come to me, and it's enough for me. Why do I have to go into a place and exile myself to a place of Torah? No, to the contrary. The way Rashi translates this next word is no, because it's your colleagues that will help you maintain. Stay next to your friends that are learning Torah, because when you learn one Masechta, they learn another Masechta, you'll hear it from them, and it'll be organized in your mouth, and you won't forget that learning. Don't rely on your own understanding to say, well, I'm a great sage, I'm going to remember it, and when I review this paragraph, this Masechta, I'm not going to forget it. No, it's not true. Don't rely on that. And as the Gemara says, Tana, we learned, this is the point why we're bringing this in, the one who said this teaching of make sure that you're in a place of Torah, not in this place of physical pleasures, his name really wasn't Rabbi Nerai, rather the name of Rabbi Nechemia. Now, but Amrila, some say, and this is what we're bringing in for, Rabbi Elazar ben Arach Shmai. His name was Rabbi Elazar ben Arach, who he was saying this because this was the story that happened with him. So, why was he called Rabbi Nerai? Because he illuminated the eyes of the sage of halacha. But again, in spite of that, even so, we said because he went to indulge himself in these physical pleasures, he forgot his learning. The Gemara continues with the next halacha of the Mishnah. But you're not allowed to scrape the body on Shabbos. Talking about in the Brisa. So again, scraping is not necessarily taking off any skin, but you're not supposed to be doing this type of uvn the of scraping. But then the Brisa ain't gorim b'magereres b'Shabbos. You're not scraping to scrape on Shabbos. He says, however, let's say his feet were dirty with mud and excrement, then you could scrape off that mud in the normal way. And then you don't have to be concerned that's not considered an uvd in the if it's for cleaning purposes. Now, Rav Shmuel bar Yehuda, Abdulaim, what his mother did for him, that also allowed him to do this. She made for him megarar to the kaspa, a silver scraper, specifically for Shabbos. And if that's not an uvd in the chayil, some people have like a Shabbos toothbrush. There are certain things that if you do it specifically for Shabbos, that does not have a problem. And they were also that it wasn't uvd in the chayil because there's a special Shabbos scraper. The Mishnah said, "Ein yord lo kedima." You're not supposed to go down into the Kedima River on Shabbos and Chul, etc. The Gemara said, "My time, what's the reason?" The Gemara said, "Mishum pika," because of slipping, because the mud on that river is very slippery, and a person's going to slip. A person's clothing is going to get soaked with water when he falls in, and he might come to squeeze it out. Therefore, we don't go to that river on Shabbos. Next halacha was, "Vein leis nafektaviz in Shabbos." You're not supposed to do something that induces vomiting on Shabbos. So Amar Rabbi B'chan Rebbeinu says, "We didn't learn this ela b'sam. Only if you're using some type of a medicine that's similar to healing, and therefore that we said you can't use that to induce vomiting because that's a gezerah of shchikas hamanim, of any type of vitamin or a health thing, because you might come to grind the herbs. But to use your hand, which you stick the finger down the throat to induce vomiting, that would be permitted. Now, however, Tanya will in the Brisa, interestingly, Rabbi Nechemia says, actually, you're not allowed to induce vomiting even during the weekday. And they have selechem because of waste of food. You have the food in your intestines, and what happens is when you vomit it makes you hungry and you want to eat, so you're wasting the food because you just want to be able to eat and indulge in all those gastronomical pleasures. But that's considered half seichel, and one shouldn't do it even during the weekday. Now, last halacha of the Mishnah, he says, "You're not straighten out the spine of a child." So, related to this, and the Gemara is going to ask on this, Amar Rabba B'chan Rebbeinu, and he says, "Lafufi yenuka b'Shabbos," to wrap an infant on Shabbos, like they do for a baby, where they wrap the limbs that it shouldn't get crooked, Shabbos Dami, that's okay. That's just about Banan Tam. We learned in our Mishnah Ema to now straighten out the spine of a child. It says Gemara, no, Hasam over there in our Mishnah is Bechurmei Shedra. Talking about the vertebrae of the spine, which one of them came out. You know, the L16 or whatever it is, one of the vertebrae came out. And we're talking about at a later point in time, as Rashi explains, the day of the birth, the Gemara said, whatever was in the Teicha, you're allowed to do for a newborn baby on Shabbos, which that you're allowed to do. Come on, at a later point in time, where the baby has a herniated disc or something that was from that's the Mexican twin. That looks like what the chiropractor is doing. It looks like you're building a person. That would be problematic. But just to wrap the child on Shabbos to keep it straight, that would be permitted to be done. That would not be a problem about binding. Some of these we spoke about today's Daf and Shabbos Daf Kuf Mem Zayin. So we spoke about related to the previous Daf about Malabin, which we spoke about when you were traveling on Shabbos and your clothing got wet, which was a problem of Marasayin, and we're not concerned that you're going to come to squeeze it out. So we said if someone shakes off his garment on Shabbos, which Rashi says it's from dust, you're not allowed to go ahead and have that. Depends. That's considered Malabin. You have that on your jacket and it's shaking it off. That's a problem about Malabin. You chayav chatas. But the Gemara said 3 qualifications. It's only if it's new, it's only if it's black, meaning a dark color, and only if you're particular about it. And the Gemara put stories that they didn't because they weren't particular. And since I'm not particular, meaning I would wear it even so, then you'll actually have to go ahead and take it off because that's not a problem. So if someone goes out with a folded talis, he's going to be chayav because that's not the way of wearing stuff, so you're really carrying. And like we said, just like those who sell the garments or the money that's tied into their clothing, that's really everyone, but that's just the ones who usually do it, and that's forbidden because that's carrying. But we said you could go out with the kerchief on your shoulder, if that's the way of normally wearing a kerchief, and as we said, you don't even have to wrap it on your finger. We said you not make a quote-unquote mars of a gutter on Shabbos. What does that mean? We said these Babylonian pockets, which are really basically like cuffing up the garment, but we said it's only if your intention as l'chanufa is to keep it like that permanently. But if you're just folding it up, then that wouldn't be a problem. That's just lehisnois. We said also, we talked about folding up the garments regarding of haitzah, which we said that, let's say, even like Rebbe had a story where even though it was full frontal and back, but just the side he had picked up, they said even that's considered a problem about carrying on Shabbos. Then we went to the next initiative. We said if someone is bathed himself, which the Gemara made a dik and says hareichetz is a terminology of b'diavad, if he bathed himself. We said, yeah, that's like Reb Shimon, because the bathing is in hot water, because we were comparing it to the Chamei Tferya, because that was the other case in the Mishnah to compare the two, which was saying that hot water, it's b'diavad if you bathe himself. But that means to say, but let's say if you're just showering yourself, then that would be permitted even initially with hot water. That's like Reb Shimon, not like the other two Tanoim of Rabbi Yehuda and Reb Meir. So we said, if someone did bathe himself, which again is b'diavad, we said if he's one person, so then it's forbidden to him even with 10 towels. If he's 10 people, then even 1 towel is allowed to. So that's what we said, that although that's the Tana of Mishnah, but Reb Shimon in the Gemara, he disagrees, and he says, and there was actually 4 different opinions that also said the same thing, that no, actually one person is allowed to carry talisas, it's not a problem. Then we said that sachin and mamashvish, you're allowed to anoint yourself with oil, you're allowed to massage the body, as long as you don't do it during the weekday is, which we had 2 different interpretations, either that first massage, then anoint, or do it at the same time, but it just can't be the way it's normally done during the weekday. Or actually, it's sachin and mamashvish. Then we said, however, but you can't vigorously rub, and you're also not allowed to scrape, which the Gemara says, you're allowed to scrape if you're dirty, or if you have a chaspa like his mother did, where she made a special Shabbos scraper, then it's permitted. And regarding Misamlan, we said that's also the reason why you shouldn't go by the karka of the yumsis, because that it's vigorously, it's that pleasure of that spa over there, which it also does that, and that's a problem about the grifura. And we said actually that's what happened to the Aseres HaShvatim, and also for the famous Tana of Elazar ben Arach, where he went over there and he said, Hacheresh HaYilibam, the physical pleasure is what took them away from learning Torah and from being being a regular Yid. We said also you shouldn't go down into the Kardima River because you might slip. We said don't do afraktafizin, makes you induce vomiting. That's with a potion, because that's similar to like refuah, which you might come to grind the herbs. But finger is okay. But then the Gemara said actually even during the weekday it's a problem because of hefzer eichel, because you're actually wasting the food that you ate. We said ema atzin hakat, you're not allowed to straighten out the spine of a child. Now we said lafufe, to wrap the child actually is permitted. But what's the difference ma'atzman? Because that's the chumri shedra. That's actually the vertebrae that's out, and you're straightening it out. That looks like baina. That's forbidden to go to the chiropractor and do that on Shabbos. And we said also imadzin hasheva, you're not allowed to put back a broken bone and fix that break on Shabbos. And we said, last halach l'mishnah, which we'll explain in the next stop, if someone has a joint that got displaced, you shouldn't go ahead and wash it with cold water, because if you wash it in the normal way and then have it, fine, but you can't specifically go rub it with cold water on Shabbos. Thank you to any time for hosting us.